Hi, my name is Larry Flaxman. I'm a best-selling author, public speaker, and paranormal theorist. I'm at the Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and I am so excited to be a part of ESP 2024 this year.
What would you say to someone who is skeptical about the paranormal?
Wow. What would I say to somebody that was skeptical about the paranormal? I would say come visit the historic 1886 Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs to have an experience. I started out a long time ago being a skeptic. That was really sort of my primary goal, was to debunk everything that was considered paranormal. And after a period of time, and sort of opening myself to those experiences, I started having experiences. And I think really the only way that one could be convinced is to have one of those experiences. And like I said, the Crescent Hotel is an excellent place to have an experience. Obviously I can't guarantee that you'll have an experience here, but I would say the vast majority of folks that stay here have something that's happened. And I certainly have over the years that I've been here. Generally, every time that I come, something happens. But I think having an experiential type event really is what would convince most individuals that are skeptics.
In your experience, which areas of the Crescent Hotel are most active?
So in my experience, the areas of the Crescent Hotel that are most haunted would generally be the areas that are recognized as having some type of event associated with them. The morgue is certainly probably number one on my list. Michael's room, Theodora's room 419, the governor's suite, the conservatory, really all of the open spaces and areas at the Crescent I've had some type of experience in over the years. So I don't know that I would say that any one is more haunted than the other, but certainly I think folks are more apt to have experiences in some of those areas that are more known. The morgue is definitely top of the list, though. If you've spent any appreciable amount of time in the morgue, whether in the cooler, in the main section of the morgue, or here in the parts room, there's a pretty good likelihood that you've had some type of an experience or know of someone that's had some type of experience. Here in the morgue is actually the only place in the hotel that I've actually had a physical encounter, where I actually had a physical event with what I believe to be Norman Baker.
What happened?
During one of the ESP weekends, I was leading a group down here in the morgue. I'm making increasingly sarcastic comments, I'll say, about Norman Baker. I'm being, I don't want to say disrespectful, but I was certainly being provoking, and I was antagonizing Mr. Baker. And as I was doing so, I felt this absolutely incredible searing heat from the base of my neck all the way down to right above my butt. And it's like nothing I'd ever felt before. It literally, I'm getting chills just thinking about this now, but it felt like a hot poker being dragged down my back. And I was so affected that I actually had to get up and leave and go back up to my room, because I was in a significant amount of pain, and I didn't know what was happening. Was this some sort of a weird heart attack? Was I having, some sort of a health event? And I got upstairs. My wife at the time, my ex-wife, had me take my shirt off, and she looked, and there were very clearly, there were fingernails that were dragged down my back from the bottom of my neck. And it was very clear there was 3 imprints that had broken the skin, that were all the way down my back. And I have no explanation for how that could have occurred other than the timing. So ever since then, I have attempted to make amends with Mr. Baker. So that was really one of the scariest events that I've ever had. Definitely be respectful. Definitely don't antagonize, and don't do anything that would be considered impolite.
What are some of your favorite ghost hunting tools to use?
The brain, first of all, your own mind, the ability to assess the situation in a rational manner, and to be objective to that situation. I would say don't go into a reportedly haunted location automatically assuming that it is haunted or that you'll have an event, because many times if you have that anticipation, it can somewhat create a physical manifestation of that. So it's sort of like the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you think that it's haunted, you think that you're going to have an event happen or something, then many times you actually will. Whether or not it's legitimate paranormal or not completely remains to be seen. But I would say your brain is number one. Number two, and this might be different for other paranormal investigators or other individuals, but I like to use EMF meters during an investigation, but maybe not for the same reason that you might think. Actually, the history of the EMF meter was they were created in the late 60s, early 1970s as a means to detect microwave leakage from microwave ovens. Back then, microwave ovens were fairly new, and to determine the health impact and the risk, EMF meters were developed essentially to help determine that. So I'm not sure how EMF meters became sort of associated with spirits or ghosts, but they're absolutely not. What I do use an EMF meter for, though, is eliminating environmental factors that may be causative of a physiological experience. And what I mean by that is areas that are known to have high electromagnetic field radiation. Areas like AC motors, inductors, coils in a refrigerator. Any type of a man-made electrical source, AC, there has been a strong correlation between that and physiological effects such as nausea, headaches, diarrhea, and disassociation. So you can Google high EMF and the results of that. And, so I like to use an EMF meter to determine in an environment if there are sources of electromagnetic radiation that are present. Is there electrical wiring that's running through the wall or the floor that could potentially be causing you to have a physiological belief that something is happening? They're also really good for determining if there is breaker boxes that are active, for instance, any type of an electrical source. So reducing environmental conditions, reducing those variables for me are probably one of the most important things. The third thing to me, because I have a particular focus or interest in electronic voice phenomena, the third thing for me is a digital recorder. You don't have to purchase anything fancy. You can buy just a run-of-the-mill regular digital recorder. In fact, many people still even use, believe it or not, analog cassette recorders. I brought one here with me this weekend actually to experiment. I've never brought one to the Crescent and tried it out. I've always used digital recording devices, but some type of a recording device.
What has been your most memorable paranormal investigation?
My most memorable?
Mm-hmm. Here or elsewhere.
Whew. I don't want to sound like a shill for the Crescent, but I mean, 100%, it was the experience I had here in the morgue. I mean, I've had a lot of experiences all over the country, but by far, having something scratch me was probably the most impressive, at least for me, having some sort of physical contact. I've seen things, I've heard things, I've smelt things. I've had a lot of, physical experiences at reportedly haunted locations, but having something physically scratch me, I think was probably the most impactful. Yeah, that was probably the most impactful to me because it honestly, it scared the crap out of me, Maddie. I mean, I've never had anything like that happen. And there was a period of time after that where I considered not even doing this because it had freaked me out so much.
What makes the Crescent Hotel unique in the world of paranormal investigation?
I've found that the staff have become like second family to me. I love coming to the Crescent Hotel. It's a beautiful location in a beautiful Victorian town. It's sort of like visiting your family. That's certainly a big part of it. But for me, the Crescent Hotel sort of holds a unique fascination even going beyond Norman Baker, looking at when this was a conservatory, or even further back when this was a spa and resort. And if you have any type of an interest in historical locations, the Crescent is absolutely, one not to be missed. Eureka Springs is an absolutely gorgeous town. In fact, I have tried to figure out a way to, when I retire, to move up here and live, because I love the town so much and love the people so much and would love to be closer to my Crescent family. But I think another thing that really is kind of awesome about the Crescent is that they are so open and aware of their history and their connection to the paranormal. There is a lot of hotels, a lot of locations across the country that sort of have an underground following within the paranormal. However, the owners of the locations absolutely deny any type of experiences at those locations. Having that openness at the Crescent Hotel has also really been cool. The other thing that I think is really kind of unique about the Crescent is that, again, while you can't be 100% guaranteed to have an experience, the vast majority of people that I talk to that have visited the Crescent and have stayed for any length of time have had some type of an appreciable event, whether they've stayed in Michael's room 218, Theodore's room 419, even the annex rooms 3500 or so. People have consistently reported having experiences at the Crescent. So I think that's something that certainly needs to be made aware. People need to be made aware of that. If you are looking for some type of an experience, the Crescent is probably the place that you want to check out.
What is your favorite room at the Crescent?
My favorite room at the Crescent is one that is absolutely not considered to be haunted. Well, I mean, really, is there any room here that's sort of not? But my favorite room is 402. I've just come to really like it. I have some great memories of that. Last year during ESP, we all got snowed in for like a week after the first ESP weekend. And it's a beautiful view outside the window. My second favorite at the hotel would be the Governor's Suite 101. I love that room. I've stayed in that room, I think, twice now maybe. That room is just, to me, so cool, knowing that was Norman Baker's office and that he was actually situated in that area at one time. Yeah, probably 402 and 101 are probably my two favorites.
Do you think Norman Baker has hidden treasure buried or hidden somewhere on property?
You gonna film this? Or is this just for you want to know?
Well, I'm curious what you think.
I actually asked that question. So we did an EVP session at Theodore's room 2 years ago at ESP. And the answer is yes. Do I think that there's anything hidden? Absolutely I do, but I'm not certain what it is. So I've heard rumors about money being buried potentially like behind the hotel or in the hotel someplace in the walls. I don't know. I don't know if that's bears out in fact or not, but I can tell you that there are hidden things here at the hotel. Even if they're not gold or monetary in value, they're valuable to the hotel. They're valuable to the history and the legacy of the Crescent Hotel. So I do think there is treasure that's buried here that probably stuff between the walls, probably more stuff underneath the floors that we don't know about. Norman Baker's money, I don't know. I've heard stories about it. I don't know if Norman Baker would have been the type to, get himself dirty and try to bury something like that out, behind the big oak tree in the backyard. No doubt that there's more bottles, that it goes beyond the bottle dump that we dug. I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever that there's, more pieces of that, but I don't know. I don't know if he has, gold, silver money that's buried. It'd be kind of cool to think that he does.
Who should be attending our ESP weekends?
Oh gosh. Who should be attending our ESP weekends? Everyone. If you have an interest in the paranormal, if you have an interest in historical locations, the Crescent Hotel ESP, the Eureka Springs Paranormal Weekend, is absolutely one that you can't miss. It is an opportunity to investigate areas of the hotel that are essentially off limits or closed during the year. You get to investigate locations that you only get to see a small portion of during the ghost tours. You get to hear for and learn from some really great individuals that are involved in the paranormal. You get to network with other folks that are in the paranormal. It's a really cool experience because you take away from the experience more than you bring to it. There is not a single year at ESP that I myself hadn't learned something. Whether it's one of the attendees and I talking, if it's something new that I've learned about the Crescent, it's an awesome educational experience. But it's way beyond that. It's not just that. It's having the ability to investigate the hotel in a way that isn't normally available to folks. So if you have any interest whatsoever in the Crescent Hotel, in the historic town of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, in Norman Baker and Quack Medical stuff, or just in the paranormal, ESP is absolutely an event that you should attend.
Without giving too much away, what can you say a guest should expect at ESP?
You can expect to be wowed in a number of ways. One, I think you will learn quite a bit by attending the event, but you'll also have the ability to potentially have an experience that you may not normally have due to the number of the number of guests that normally are in the hotel. Having access to some of the areas of the hotel that are really limited, I think gives you the opportunity to more likely have an experience. I think different people get different things from it. I've talked to people that, didn't want to be there. Their spouse, dragged them to it, kicking and screaming, and they ended up leaving, essentially changing their entire outlook on the paranormal and what happens after death. So, I think it can be a fundamentally life-changing event for people. I've also made some great friendships, like hopefully lifelong friendships with people. There are folks that I've met at ESP1 that I still regularly converse with on Facebook and, email and stuff. And, they'll send me a picture every now and then. Because of attending ESP, they their love for the paranormal grew to the point where they're doing paranormal investigations, and they'll send me photos or audio to look at. So I think, having the ability to make lifelong friends, I think is pretty important too. It's a big part of ESP.
One more question.
Shoot.
What can you tell me about the bottles behind you?
So in 2019, a gardener was digging behind the hotel, and she found a bottle. And she dug a little more, found another bottle, continued to dig, and oh my gosh, these bottles started popping up. So she called hotel management. Hotel management advised her to stop digging, and the University of Arkansas was called in to do an archaeological dig. They retrieved a number of bottles. Unfortunately, 2+ years after that, Fayetteville, for whatever reason, still had not provided any answers as to the contents of some of those bottles. I had volunteered to use some of my resources that I have available to try to get some answers. So I took a bottle back with me that contained potential human remains. We weren't sure. And I spent the next 6 months trying to find a private pathology lab that would be interested in analyzing the samples. Finally, one of the places that I had emailed, the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, I got a call back, and they said that their head of pathology would be interested in speaking with me. We quickly struck up a really cool friendship, which has continued, and his name is Dr. Matt Quick, and Matt agreed to analyze the sample for me. So brought it down. They vivisectioned or sliced the sample into a number of paper-thin samples for microscopic analysis to determine whether this was potentially human tissue. So after a litany of tests, they did determine that it was human tissue, that it had been remarkably well preserved in the ground. It was pretty unusual, actually. It was evidence of a bed sore, and for a hospital that was engaged in allegedly curing cancer, it shows somewhat of a different side of the hospital, in my belief. In the 30s, back in Norman Baker's heyday, wound care was greatly different than it is today. And if a patient was bedridden for any length of time, they would develop what are called bed sores. And these bed sores, if left untreated or not removed, would quickly become cystic and could cause the patient to die. So as part of a standard of care, they would remove the bed sore. It was a process called debriding, where they would essentially use a medical spoon and scoop out the bed sore, which was just dead tissue. The patient essentially wouldn't feel anything because it was dead tissue. And then they would pack that wound with gauze and antiseptic material. So this particular sample that I had analyzed was evidence of a bed sore that had been removed from a patient at Norman Baker's Cancer Hospital. So to me, that shows a side completely outside of just basic cancer care, and that it shows that there was a level of standard care that was being applied to these patients. So a lot of the bottles behind me contain unknown substances. One of these days, I'd like to get a lot of them analyzed. I've been working with several different sources for funding options to look at mass scale spectroscopy, as well as some other types of material science handling, where we can actually analyze some of the physical samples. There's some powders, there's some greasy looking substances, including one that I poked my finger through doing the dig. There's a variety of different things here that I would love to get analyzed to figure out what they are. They're all part of Norman Baker's story. They're all part of the history of the Baker Cancer Hospital or the Crescent Hotel. So I can't tell you what a lot of these things are behind me simply because we don't know. One of these days, hopefully we will know the answer to that and be able to close the book on that story.
So I think there's an assumption that most of the jars behind you would be medicinal.
I think so.
Why do you think they would have saved a bed sore?
Norman Baker would actually prove, or he had this poster that he would display to show patients and show prospective patients how successful he was in treating or removing cancer. So from my understanding, he also had a large display that was set up downstairs near where his desk is currently now in the hotel, in the lobby, where when prospective patients would walk in, they would see this bottle display and they would think, oh wow, they would see it and they would automatically be just wowed by it. Like, this guy must really know his stuff. You know, here is the evidence of these tumorous, cancers that have been removed from individuals. So I think it was a showpiece to a large extent for Norman Baker. So I think he would keep things like that because most people outside the medical community would have no idea what a bed sore is versus a cancer tumor. In fact, when we first looked at the bed sore, Dr. Quick believed it was a blood clot. So, and that's a medical professional. So until we actually started looking deeper into it microscopically and, you know, kind of peeling back the layers of the mystery there to determine that it was a bed sore, you know, even a medical professional wasn't exactly sure what it was. So an ordinary non-medical individual seeing those things would probably have been just absolutely amazed by it. Interestingly enough, though, and this is something that I've never seen really any answer, at least for my satisfaction, Norman Baker was very big on advertising that he can remove cancer non-surgically. In other words, that he had the ability by the injection of his magic formula, that he could kill the cancer that was within individual's body without resorting to any type of surgery to extricate or to remove those tumors. Well, how do you have displays though that you're purporting to be cancers that have been removed from individuals if you're using, you know, an injectable solution essentially to dissolve those tumors, and you're advertising that you remove these things non-surgically? Were you teleporting them out of the body? There's really not been a whole lot of rational thought, I think, put into that. I kind of picture yourself at that time or picture yourself, you know, as an individual that is, you're in pain, or a family member, you know, you're thinking about survival. So you're not really thinking about small little details like that. All you're thinking about is how he's going to be able to cure you or cure your loved one. That's all you would have a focus on, not, you know, small details like, well, how do you have samples if you didn't remove them from the individuals? But yeah, Norman Baker, I think, was a big showman. We know that he was, based on his history of owning radio shows and, you know, being a part of vaudeville. Norman Baker has had a long history in showmanship. So I think the bottles played a significant part of Norman Baker's showmanship of the Baker Cancer Hospital.
You have lots of videos where you've talked about the Crescent. Where can people find that?
So you can either go to my YouTube channel. I have an entire playlist specifically for the Crescent Hotel on my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Larry Flaxman. Or you can go to my website, www.larryflaxman.com, and you'll have links to all of my social medias, including YouTube. I try to post a significant number of videos about the Crescent simply because it's a passion of mine. I love the Crescent, and I tend to have a lot of really cool experiences while I'm here, so I like to document those and share those with people. I hope to see you guys very, very soon at ESP 2024. Can't wait.